Hello to you, Louis. Good evening, and thank you for your time. 500 billion rand is an awful amount of money for 70% of those businesses to be failing. Where's this gone wrong?
There's a number of reasons that could have gone wrong. I think generally there's been a pretty, I'd say, skeptical relationship between small businesses, at least the small business community, and formal banks and government. For the most part, your small businesses aren't the best at administration. Just to be truthful, their accounts aren't always in order. They're not always in good standing with SARS. So we're making assumptions that might be some of the reasons. But the fact is that only half of small businesses applied for some kind of relief, whether through the SA Future Trust or through the Solidarity Fund or any of the others. Of the half that applied, as you mentioned, about 68% of them were unsuccessful. So if you look at the total small business community, we estimate the number to be at around 15% of all SMMEs actually received some form of relief, which obviously is not good news.
No, it's not at all, and we'll pick up as to what the sticking points are from government side in a moment. Louis, I'm curious to hear, though, about the survey when you're saying that only 50% of SMMEs actually applied. Why do you think that is? Did the survey point to anything specific?
It did. I mean, at the end of the day, there's a level of, it's almost more of a decade of mistrust between, the SMME community and formal banks and government. I mean, a lot of the, history of some of the tensions come back to, years and years of calls to reduce the red tape and bureaucracy around a lot of processes to start a business in this country. I think the current average sits at about, it takes about 40 days on average to start a business in South Africa. In Rwanda, it takes about 4 days. And in Togo, it takes a bit less. So, and that status quo hasn't changed a lot, despite a lot of promises. Some hope came through when the president announced the 200 billion rand loan guarantee scheme, specifically aimed at small to medium-sized enterprises. That is, to put it into numbers, small to medium-sized enterprises below that earn or have total revenues of less than 300 million rand per annum, they qualify for the scheme. But the fact is that's geared more towards your medium-sized businesses rather than your small businesses. About 85% of your SMMEs are small businesses, meaning that they earn less than 10 million rand per annum. And these are traditionally quite risky profile type of clients for the banks to underwrite.
Louis, help me understand government's approach to small business, especially with that number of being 10 million per annum and below is considered a small business. It's a very large gap to try and fill. I don't imagine many small businesses are getting anywhere near 10 million rand a year. From government's side of things, how can they change this process? How do they try and make the bureaucracy around this a bit easier for SMMEs?
It is a bit of a Rubik's Cube, so we're not pointing fingers at governments. We want to be solution orientated at the end of the day. I think that's the kind of DNA of entrepreneurs for the most part. But from the research, we suggested three what we believe short-term immediate action points that government can look at to help fill this gap. The first is to rope the non-bank lenders into the loan guarantee scheme. These are innovative organizations that have supported the small business community with very flexible, responsive, data-driven models of lending. I think in the last 5 years alone, they've helped over 100,000 small businesses, which isn't a lot in the bigger scheme of things, but the success rate of those have been the trust that those organizations have fostered with the small business community and the responsiveness to the small business community's needs has been, at a standard way above what government or the banks can offer.
Louis, so I don't mean to interrupt. Just before I do need to say goodbye to you shortly, just take me through those other 2 points, if you don't mind.
Yeah, so quickly, South Africa is at the forefront of fintech innovation. We are recognized globally for some of the technologies that we have pioneered. There has to be investment in those to speed up and make the access to funding and the speed of administration a lot smoother. And the third one is from our own research and from the consortium of partners that we represent. There's a need for more research into the SMME community. There's a lot of SNAP surveys. Ours is a component of that. But there is a need for a consolidated view of what the reality is of the SMME sector in the country.
Louis Janse van Rensburg, I thank you for your time from Heavy Chef Foundation, speaking to us about the failure of the majority, it seems, of SMMEs in South Africa. Louis, I appreciate your time this evening for joining us here on ENCA.